Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I'm joined this morning by the brave men and women of law enforcement to accept the endorsement of police associations from across the Hudson Valley, New York City, and the state of New York. The Rockland County PBA, the Police Conference of New York, the Port Authority PBA, and the Port Authority Sergeants Benevolence Association, the Havistraw PBA, Yorktown PBA, Carmel PBA, and the Carmel LBA, the Westchester County Corrections Superior Officers Association, the New York State Supreme Court Officers Association, and the Sergeants Benevolent Association of New York City. To every president and every officer standing here today, thank you. Your support means the world to me, and I don't take it for granted. Some of you have been with me from my very first race. I grew up here in Rockland County. I know what it means to live in a community where police are part of the neighborhood, where they coach the teams and know the families and show up for people on the worst day of their lives. These are the men and women who run towards danger when everyone else runs away. And they are the reason Rockland, Putnam, Westchester, and Dutchess counties remain among the safest places in America to live and raise a family. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens because of the people standing behind me. And because of the voters of this district keep saying no to the politicians who attack them. And the fact is, my record with law enforcement is crystal clear. I voted for the Police Act, which makes assaulting a police officer a deportable offense. I voted twice for the Leosa Reform Act to expand carry rights for off-duty and retired officers. I voted for the Lake and Riley Act, which is now the law of the land. I voted for the Halt Fentanyl Act to help get this poison off our streets. And when the far left tried to defund and dismantle police departments across this country, I voted to condemn that movement outright. As a member of the state legislature, I fought to restore 50A. And I called out the hypocrisy of the Democrats in the state legislature who voted to release the personnel files of law enforcement officers regardless of whether a claim had merit or not, but had the audacity to vote to protect their own personnel records from being subject to FOIA. I will always back the blue, and I will always stand with the men and women in law enforcement who keep our communities safe. I will never yield or relent in my opposition to pro-criminal policies like cashless bail or raise the age. These types of policies have made our communities less safe. They have put law enforcement at risk. And sadly, some of the elected officials and politicians have treated the criminals as victims, the police as criminals, and disregarded the victims of crime. My opponent has stood shoulder to shoulder with those very folks. Kate Conley just accepted the endorsement of the Working Families Party, the party that has called for defunding the police and abolishing ICE. And her response? She said she was excited to be working alongside them. Excited. Well, let me be clear. I am completely opposed to them. Meanwhile, Albany Democrats have now passed the so-called Local Cops Local Crimes Act, which bars local police from cooperating with federal immigration authorities and threatens to strip state law enforcement funding from any department that refuses to comply. A week from tomorrow, on August 25th, cooperation agreements among a dozen law enforcement agencies across 10 counties will be torn up under that law. I've been very clear. Governor Hochul needs to call the legislature back and repeal this disastrous law immediately. It is time for the state of New York to choose safety over sanctuary. It is time for the state of New York to put public safety and the rights of law-abiding citizens above criminal illegal aliens. Now, Kate Conley's platform, posted on her own campaign website, calls for revoking 287G agreements. That is the exact cooperation Albany is tearing up right now. So I have a simple question for Kate. Will you call on Albany to repeal its sanctuary law? Yes or no? The men and women on this stage deserve an answer, and so does every family in the district. This is a very simple situation to understand. Since Donald Trump took office, the state of New York has released over 7,000 criminal illegal aliens back out onto the streets, including those who have committed murder, rape, assault, gun crimes, drug crimes. Kathy Hochul said that if somebody committed a crime in the state of New York and they were here illegally, she would be the first one to call ICE. That is a bold-faced lie. She has released over 7,000 criminal illegal aliens back out onto the streets. And there are over 7,000 detainer requests pending right now on criminal aliens being held in jails across New York State that Kathy Hochul is refusing to acknowledge. That does not make us more safe. It does not protect law-abiding American citizens. Heck, it doesn't even protect those that are in this country illegally who are not committing crimes while here. It makes everybody less safe. But it is in keeping with New York's disastrous criminal justice policies. Laken Riley's murderer was arrested in the state of New York and released under cashless bail only to brutally murder that young girl. Sheridan Gorman, an 18-year-old beautiful young girl who had her whole life ahead of her, a resident of Yorktown, was brutally murdered by an illegal immigrant who entered into this country under Joe Biden's open border policies, only to be detained and released, goes to Chicago, commits a crime, arrested, released under their disastrous pro-criminal cashless bail policies, and brutally executes this girl. And Kathy Hochul's response is to double down on the disastrous policies that got us here in the first place. And Kate Conley supports it. No ifs, ands, or buts. Look, this election is a choice. You can stand with the people who protect our communities, or you can stand with a party that wants to defund them. I made my choice a long time ago, and I will never apologize for backing the blue. As long as I have the honor of representing New York's 17th District, our police will have the funding, the tools, and the respect that they have earned. With that, I'd like to introduce the President of the Rockland County PBA, Sean O'Connor, to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
On behalf of the Rockland County PBA, I want to take a moment to recognize Congressman Mike Lawler for his continued support of the men and women of law enforcement here in Rockland County. Our police officers put on the uniform every day to protect our communities, often facing difficult and unpredictable situations. Having elected officials who listen to our concerns, stand behind our officers, and recognize the importance of public safety means a great deal to us. Mike, we appreciate your willingness to work with the law enforcement community and your support for the Rockland County PBA and the officers we represent. Thank you for standing with our police officers and for recognizing the important role they play in keeping our communities safe. On behalf of the Rockland County PBA, it is my honor to offer our full support and endorsement of your campaign to Congress in New York's 17th District. We proudly give Congressman Lawler our endorsement, not because of the party he represents, but because of what he has done for police officers, both in office and in his professional life. When it comes to policing and public safety, our decisions are not driven by party affiliation. They are based on individual, their record, and their commitment to those who serve and protect Rockland County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. And I want to introduce the President of the Police Conference of New York, Mike O'Meara.
Thank you. Good morning. The Police Conference of New York is a statewide organization. We represent police officers from the tip of Long Island to Buffalo up to the Canadian border, including everybody in the middle, including New York City. We unanimously, at our May meeting, endorsed Mike Lawler in his re-election campaign for Congress. We've known Mike since he was an assemblyman in New York State. As he said before, he spoke up for us. He called out hypocrisy. He used common sense in his arguments. He's always done that. He continues to do that. I'm also happen to be a constituent. I live in Rockland County, not far from where Mike lives. And I appreciate, from my family's perspective, that he puts my family before felons. He takes his job seriously. He tries to use common sense and his good, strong education from Fordham to
Manhattan.
What?
Manhattan.
Oh, Manhattan. That's right. You went to Manhattan. That's right. My son went to Manhattan too, so I should know that. I thought you were the valedictorian too, right? But anyway, wherever he went, he was really smart. But being a constituent and living in his district, I convinced my family, my friends, anybody I talk to vote for Mike Lawler. He really represents us with a vigor and a common sense attitude that is protecting our families, our schools, our police officers. Always stands with our police officers. We appreciate his support, and we will do anything in our power to help him get back into Congress to represent not only the members of his district, but police officers statewide. So with that, we endorse Mike Lawler, and we encourage everybody to vote in this election for him.
Thank you, Mike, and I just want to acknowledge some of the folks that are here with us today. Frank Conti, President of the Port Authority, PBA. Also, Andrew Caruso, Second Vice President of Port Authority Sergeants Benevolence Association. Tim Curtin, President of Yorktown PBA. Mike Bodo, President of Carmel LBA. Vincent Serio, President of the Carmel PBA. Pete DeShera, President of the Westchester County Corrections Superior Officers Association. We also have Mike Lupo, Vice President of the Havistraw PBA. Ed Geary, Treasurer of the New York City Sergeants Benevolence Association. And Enrique Poba, Region 1 Vice President, New York State FOP. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us today and all the organizations standing behind me in my re-election to Congress. You just heard directly from two of the folks who do the job. And they aren't asking for much. They're asking for leaders who have their backs, plain and simple. And in this district, we back the blue, full stop. That's what this campaign is about. Safe streets and a government that respects the people who keeps them safe. I am proud to represent a district in which 50% of households have a cop, a firefighter, a first responder, a veteran living in the household. This is a district committed to service, and it is a great district, and I am proud to represent it. So I want to thank all the men and women of law enforcement for this endorsement, and I will work every day to keep your support and respect. And with that, we're happy to take questions from the press.
Would you support the construction of an ICE detention facility in the 17th district, if they propose one?
Right now, there's not one under proposal. I know there is in the 18th district and in neighboring states. Obviously, there are facilities. It's not preference, obviously. But the fact is, you have, in the state of New York, criminals who are being released out onto the streets. And it makes no sense. You know, for my colleagues that say they don't want ICE in our communities, well, the best way to ensure that ICE is not in your communities is to cooperate, is to ensure that there is a peaceful transfer of somebody in which a detainer request has been issued and they're currently being held in a jail. If somebody has committed a crime, I don't, for the life of me, understand why the state of New York would prohibit law enforcement from turning them over to federal authorities. Mind you, if it was an American citizen, the person would be turned over. Make that make sense. An American citizen commits a crime, federal authorities request transfer, that individual would be turned over. A criminal illegal alien commits a crime and the state of New York says, nope, we're not helping you. And worse than that, now they want to spend taxpayer money providing legal counsel in a civil administrative proceeding. Think about that. They say we don't want to cooperate. We don't want to use taxpayer money to turn over a criminal for a civil proceeding, but we will spend taxpayer money to provide them legal counsel. You are entitled to legal counsel for a criminal proceeding, paid for by the government. You're not entitled to that for a civil proceeding. Make it make sense. Somebody explain to me why it is that the state of New York is prioritizing criminal illegal aliens over the rights of law-abiding New Yorkers.
On local cops, local crimes, there are a handful of jurisdictions who haven't indicated that they're going to follow the law when it goes into effect. Would you suggest that they stand their ground and don't?
Look, obviously, we want people to abide by the law. I think this law is a disaster in the making. And I think, unfortunately, New Yorkers are going to be harmed by it. I think the governor needs to repeal the law immediately. Again, if your objective is to not have ICE flood your streets, isn't it better to turn somebody over in a controlled setting, like a jail, than to force ICE to go into communities to go round up criminals? It makes no sense what Kathy Hochul is doing. I understand the argument on people who have not committed crimes. But if somebody committed a crime under state law, why is the state of New York taking the position that they will not cooperate? And she gaslights everybody, you know, with that ridiculous statement she made when if somebody calls and commits a crime, I'll be the first one to call ICE. What bullshit. She literally released 7,000 people when a detainer request was issued on people who have committed crimes, convicted of committing crimes, and she wouldn't turn them over. So it defies logic what they are doing. And to go after these law enforcement agencies by threatening to withhold state funding for law enforcement. Now, mind you, this is the same woman who was decrying Donald Trump withholding federal funding on congestion pricing, for instance. But yet she wants to withhold funding to law enforcement and force them to release criminal, illegal immigrants back out onto the street. Somebody make it make sense, because it doesn't make sense.
I wanted to ask about Central Synagogue, and so while it's not the congressional district, I still wanted to get your opinion about, what happened and what you feel, and if you feel that maybe a concealed carry weapon by the congregants, which has been done in other areas, in other synagogues, might have thwarted the damage from going even further, from being what happened.
Well, first, I have introduced legislation, the JASA Act, Jewish American Security Act, which would increase the nonprofit security grant funding to $1 billion. Our law enforcement does a phenomenal job, and especially partnering with nonprofit institutions, our municipalities here in Rockland County, to ensure that our places of worship are protected. But there also needs to be security on site. And so the nonprofit security grant program is critical. But we have seen a rapid rise in attacks on places of worship. We have seen a rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes, people being attacked for practicing their faith. And so making sure that the resources are there to have security on the ground, armed, trained, is paramount. And so I think when you look at this situation, number one, obviously there needs to be greater resources to help protect places of worship. Number two, the Attorney General of the state of New York, Letitia James, needs to actually do her fucking job, which means prosecute anti-Semitic hate crimes. Over 90% of anti-Semitic hate crimes are not prosecuted in the state of New York. So rather than running around doing whatever the hell she does, where she plays politics every day, maybe she can actually focus on what her job is, which is to ensure the safety and well-being of New Yorkers as the chief law enforcement officer in the state of New York. And so, I saw her statement she put out the other day decrying what happened. Great. Prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. Stop releasing these people on cashless bail. Start going after criminals who jeopardize the safety and well-being of law-abiding New Yorkers. That's what needs to happen here. As far as, concealed carry, look, New York State has done everything it can to go after law-abiding gun owners while releasing criminals who use guns in the commission of a crime. Again, make it make sense. Under Raise the Age, 16 and 17-year-olds use guns in the commission of the crime and they get a slap on the wrist and released back out onto the street. Somebody explain to me how that makes people safe, but somebody who is lawfully exercising their Second Amendment rights gets treated like a criminal. It doesn't make sense. So, look, people have a constitutional right to exercise their Second Amendment. I think we have seen in some locations where somebody does have a concealed carry, and there have been, a mass shooter style attack, or that they've been able to intervene. We saw it in a church just a few years ago in Texas. It obviously, when you don't have immediate access to security or law enforcement, it can make a difference and save lives. So, is it something to consider? Yeah, but I think Number one is to make sure that there are trained professionals that are protecting our places of worship.
And where did your $1 billion bill go?
Well, we introduced it, so it's working its way through the legislative process.
It hasn't been brought up.
We introduced it about a month and a half ago, so it's working its way through the process.
Is there any, if you don't mind, is there anyone from New York City who wants to comment on the Central Synagogue who's behind the congressman? Anyone? No one's from New York City?
I think some of them are, but I think,
Okay. I'll focus
yeah,
on.
we'll keep
okay.
it.
Thank
Yep,
you.
thanks.
Hi,
Yep,
Keith
Keith.
Schick with Rockland Post. Recently, as it was yesterday or today, President Trump endorsed Sarita Kamatareddy for Attorney General. Are you along with that, with the endorsement? Would you come out publicly and endorse her?
Yeah, I publicly endorse Sarita.
And second, the idea of concealed carry. I see a lot on the news, certain news shows, about reciprocal permit. You know, like somebody in Connecticut has a concealed carry that they can come into New York with it. Is there anything that's going on in the legislature to allow for reciprocal, concealed carry permits?
Yeah, so there is a bill on that, HR 28. I think one of the big concerns in law enforcement has expressed this, especially in a state like New York, where there are stricter rules in terms of being able to access a concealed carry. There are other states where there are very lax rules, and so making sure that any legislation would require compliance with the laws of the state you are going into is obviously important. But that legislation is pending. And just going back to Sarita, I would just say, look, you have a very clear choice. You have a corrupt politician in Tish James who's never done anything of substance or relevance to keep New Yorkers safe. Everything has always been entirely political. She's a hack of the highest order. And you have a career prosecutor who's gone after terrorists, criminals, and successfully gotten them off the streets and behind bars, who recognizes that the #1 job of the New York Attorney General is to keep communities safe, to enforce the law and apply it equally, and to go after fraud and corruption, which Tish James refuses to do. It's frankly embarrassing what Tish James has done, for instance, with the Medicaid fraud unit. She's done nothing. And it's a major problem. So, look, I think the choice is very clear when it comes to the candidates for Attorney General. Yes?
Not sure if you saw the governor sent a letter to the Trump admin regarding TPS. Was wondering what your conversations have looked like with the White House regarding TPS.
I've been very clear. I disagree with ending Haitian TPS. I introduced and passed legislation through the House to extend it. A third of TPS holders from Haiti work in our healthcare system, which in sum and substance, the governor repeated everything that I've been saying. I'm glad she showed up after the fact to speak out. I don't know what the hell she was doing for the last year and a half. But look, the challenge with this is pretty straightforward. The TPS system has been broken for a very long time. It was not intended to be a permanent status. The challenge, of course, is that in Haiti in particular, you've had natural disasters, you've had political unrest, you have gangs in charge of the country effectively, including the ports. You have gun trafficking coming out of Miami, drug trafficking, kidnapping. It's not safe. Now, from our perspective, we want a stable government in Haiti. We want the Haitian people to be able to go back to Haiti. But the bottom line is you need to have a stable environment on the ground, which means the gangs need to be taken out. The Biden administration did nothing. The Kenyan peacekeeping force was a joke. the Trump administration is actively working to get the gangs removed, which is paramount if you're going to have a stable situation on the ground. My view has been that they should not have terminated TPS, but you know, as they have, we should be working to process all of these immigration claims in a timely manner. You have people that have been here for 15 years working lawfully. You know, getting their claims adjudicated quickly is critical because you want them to be able to get back to work, especially, you know, in our nursing homes, our hospitals, the IDD community. So, look, I'm glad Governor Hochul finally woke up to this. Again, I don't know what she was waiting for, but you know, it obviously is an issue in which I've disagreed with the president pretty clearly.
Has the administration been receptive to your concerns about it?
Yeah, look, I've been able to get extensions previously, and you know, I'm working closely to address people within my district who have immigration claims pending to try and get those processed in a timely manner so that they can get back to work. And you know, they've been responsive and engaging on it, but you know, ultimately, this is a system, an immigration system writ large that has been broken for a very long time, and I think the president obviously has strong views on fixing it, and in particular, not continuing to just kick the can down the road on things like TPS.
Given the concerns in the last couple of weeks over conditions on the USS Abraham Lincoln, have you been in touch with the administration about that? Have you had any concerns from constituents that have been raised?
I have. I raised it directly with them. Obviously, first and foremost, the men and women who serve in our armed forces are exceedingly brave. They've done a phenomenal job in the Middle East over the last 6+ months. And the conditions always need to be addressed, both in terms of their safety and well-being, but also readiness. And I think obviously you're seeing a change. Abraham Lincoln will be departing, and you've seen some turnover coming. You know, obviously this is a difficult mission that they were sent on, and you know, a lot of volatility in the region. But it is incumbent on the administration and the Department of War to make sure that they have all of the resources that they need, and that we are doing everything in our power to address concerns. Obviously, family members raised concerns, and so you know, I had gone directly to the administration on it about 2 weeks ago, and you know, really pushed them on it. So I'm glad to see that there's been some action on it. All right.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
We're going to do a quick photo.
Yep.